The 60s were pure chaos. Bikes were louder, faster, and way more dangerous. But the ones everyone remembers aren't the ones that actually changed motorcycling. Today, we're counting down 14 forgotten machines, the sleepers, the monsters, the innovators. We promise to take you on a ride through a secret history, uncovering the true brilliant machines that time forgot. And we're starting with the baby bomber. Number 14, the Honda CB160. We're starting this list with a bike that is tiny, but its impact was massive. This is the Honda CB160, the baby bomber. You have to remember, in the early 60s, most bikes were big, leaky, British singles or twins. Motorcycles were for tough guys. They were for greasers. And then Honda came to America and said, "You meet the nicest people on a Honda." And this was the bike that sealed the deal. It was a 161 cubic centimeter parallel twin, a twin with an electric starter. What? It had a 4-speed gearbox. It made 16.5 horsepower. It weighed nothing. And it could hit 65, maybe 70 miles per hour. But that's not what made it brilliant. It was brilliant because it never broke. It didn't leak oil. It started every single time. It was a masterpiece of jewel-like engineering. This was the bike that taught America to ride. This was the gateway drug. This was the bike that your dad bought, and then your mom learned to ride, and then your neighbor bought one. It was so good, so simple, and so reliable that it's been completely overshadowed by its bigger brothers. It is the unsung hero of the entire Japanese invasion. We're just getting started. Hit the like button right now if you want to see the rest of this brilliant list, and subscribe so you don't miss anything. But if the 160 was the nice little Honda, the bike that made you meet the nicest people, our next bike was the nice Honda's evil twin from across town. Number 13, the Yamaha YR1 Grand Prix. Today, everyone knows the Yamaha RD350 and RD400, the giant killers, the two-stroke terrors of the 70s. But where did they come from? They came from this. This is the 1967 Yamaha YR1 Grand Prix. This was the bike that put Yamaha on the map. This was a 348 cubic centimeter air-cooled two-stroke twin. It made 36 horsepower. Let's put that in perspective. A 650 Triumph. Bonneville from that year made 46 horsepower. This bike, at just over half the displacement, was snapping at its heels. It was light. It was fast. It was peaky. It was the birth of the hooligan bike. It was also gorgeous. Those twin, high-swept scrambler pipes, that sleek tank looked fast just sitting still. It also introduced Yamaha's auto lube system. No more pre-mixing gas in a smelly can in your garage. You just put oil in one tank and gas in the other. It was revolutionary. This bike dominated club racing. It was the first production racer that any kid with a job could go out and buy. It's been completely forgotten because the RD350 that came after it was so good, it cast a shadow over everything. But this was the genesis. But Yamaha wasn't the only one making killer two-strokes. The Spanish, yes, Spain was building a bike so fast, it was literally named Shrapnel. Number 12, the Bultaco Metralla MK2. You've probably never heard of Bultaco, and if you have, you think of dirt bikes. But in 1966, this tiny Spanish company built a street bike that was so fast it became a legend. This is the Bultaco Metralla Shrapnel, and it was a 250cc bike, a single-cylinder, 244 cubic centimeter, two-stroke. It made 27 horsepower. That doesn't sound like a lot, but the bike weighed 250 pounds. It was a bicycle with a chainsaw engine, and it had a 5-speed transmission. This bike was the first two-stroke production bike to ever hit 100 miles per hour. From a 250 in 1966, your dad's giant Ford Galaxie 500 couldn't even do that. This was a production Grand Prix bike for the street. It was beautiful, with that classic clip-on cafe racer look. It was brilliant, it was fast, it was Spanish, and it was unreliable. It was a true race bike. It needed constant fettling. It was a bike for experts, and today it is completely forgotten by almost everyone. But for one brief shining moment, a tiny Spanish 250 was the fastest thing on the road. But if you thought a fast Spanish bike was weird, what about a British bike that tried to shake itself and its rider to death? Number 11. The Norton Atlas. Everyone knows the 1968 Norton Commando, the isoelastic frame, the bike that doesn't vibrate. But why did they need to invent that? They needed to invent it because of this. This is the Norton Atlas, the predecessor to the Commando. It was built from 1962 to 1968, and it was a monster. It had the legendary featherbed frame. This was by far the best handling frame on Earth. It was a gift from the racing gods. But then Norton's engineers got greedy. They took their 650 twin to 745 cubic centimeters. It made 56 horsepower. It was a beast. It was one of the fastest bikes in the world. There was just one problem, though. It vibrated so badly it was known as the paint shaker. If care is not taken, it could shake your fillings out or shake your vision blurry. It was a brilliant engine trapped in a brilliant frame, and the combination was unrideable. It was forgotten because the Commando fixed it. But for 6 years, this was the fastest, worst, most brilliant, and terrible bike on the planet. But Norton wasn't the only British company trying to build a monster twin. There was another one, and you probably thought their new bike was an original idea. Number 10, the Royal Enfield Interceptor 750. You've all seen the new Royal Enfield Interceptor 650. You think, wow, what a great new retro bike. Wrong, it's not retro. It's a copy of this. This is the 1962 Royal Enfield Interceptor 750. And this bike was better than the Triumphs, seriously. The Triumph Bonnevilles were good, but this was a different level. This was the Gentleman's Express. It had a 736 cubic centimeter parallel twin and a 52 horsepower. Think about that, 52. It was stronger than the Bonneville. It was smoother than the Bonneville. Why? Because it had a better crankshaft. It was dynamically balanced from the factory. It was faster than almost anything else you could buy. It was the secret weapon that all the real riders knew about. It was the fastest, smoothest, best engineered British twin of its day, period. So why is it forgotten? Why does everyone talk about the Bonneville? Because Royal Enfield was terrible at marketing. They couldn't sell water in the desert, and then tragically, they went bankrupt in 1971. Triumph survived. So the Bonneville became the legend. But this was the real king. The Interceptor 750 was the bike the Bonneville wanted to be. Every time you see a new Interceptor 650 on the road today, take a moment. Pay some respect to the original 750. Because without this forgotten masterpiece, that new bike wouldn't even exist. Did you own one of these bikes? Share your story in the comments. But big rumbling British twins were becoming old news. The world was changing. The real action, the real speed, wasn't coming from England anymore. It was coming from Italy. And it was coming in a tiny, screaming package. Number 9, the Ducati Mach 1. This is it. This is the birth of the legend. When you think Ducati, you think Desmo. You think desmodromic valves. The system where the valve is closed by a rocker arm, not a spring. It's magic. It lets engines rev to the moon. And it started right here. This is the 1964 Ducati Mach 1, and it was a 250cc bike, a single-cylinder, 249 cubic centimeter, air-cooled engine. It made 27.5 horsepower, and it was the fastest 250 on Earth. This bike, this little single-cylinder bike, could hit 106 miles per hour, a 250. It was a production race bike, plain and simple. It was light, it was narrow, it handled like it was on rails, and it had that magic Desmo head. It was brilliant, but it was also a Ducati. It was finicky, it was expensive, and it was fragile. It was completely forgotten when the big V-twins showed up in the 70s. But every single modern Ducati, every Panigale, every monster owes its entire life to this tiny, forgotten, 100 mile per hour 250. But Ducati wasn't the only one building a giant killer. The Japanese were building a two-stroke so reliable, so big, it didn't make any sense. Number 8. The Suzuki T500 Titan. This beast here is a 500cc, two-stroke, twin-cylinder touring bike. What? You have to understand. In the 60s, two-strokes were supposed to be one thing: grenades. They were peaky, and sadly too, they were unreliable. They vibrated your hands until numb. They were smoke-belching monsters that you rode fast for 10 minutes and then fixed for 2 hours. And then, in 1968, Suzuki released this, the T500 Titan. This bike isn't just a motorcycle, it is a legend of reliability. It had a massive 492 cubic centimeter, air-cooled, two-stroke twin. It made 47 horsepower. But it wasn't a racer, it wasn't trying to kill you, it was a tourer. It had so much torque that you could leave it in fifth gear from 25 miles per hour, all the way to 100. And the most amazing part? It never broke. Suzuki over-engineered this thing to an insane degree. The engine cases were massive blocks of aluminum. The bearings were huge. The crankshaft was built to survive a nuclear blast. This was the Honda Cub of big bikes. It was an unkillable tank. It proved to the world that a two-stroke could actually be more reliable than most four-strokes of the day. It didn't leak oil like the British bikes. It didn't need constant valve adjustments because it didn't have valves. It was so good, so reliable that it was actually kind of boring. And when the crazy triples and the big four-strokes showed up a few years later, the T500 was just forgotten. It became the sensible shoe of the motorcycle world. But make no mistake, it is still one of the most brilliant, bulletproof, and influential engines ever built. But a twin? That's easy. Anyone can build a twin. What about a triple? What about the first, the original, the one that started the superbike war? Number 7. The Triumph Trident 150. In 1968, the motorcycle world changed. The Japanese were coming. The British knew they had to do something big, and this was their answer: the Triumph Trident T150. This was the first modern multi-cylinder superbike. This was before the Honda CB750. The Trident had a 741 cubic centimeter, three-cylinder engine. With its 58 horsepower, it was the fastest thing the British had ever built. It was smoother than a twin, it revved higher, and it made that unmistakable three-cylinder howl. This bike was a masterpiece of engineering, but it was also a disaster of styling. The designers put this brilliant engine into a bike that looked like a toaster. It was also expensive. And then just 9 months later, Honda released the CB750. The Honda was a four-cylinder. It had an electric start, a disc brake, and it was cheaper. The Trident was dead on arrival. It was completely forgotten. But for a brief, shining moment, this was the most advanced and most brilliant bike in the world. But triples were a gimmick. What if you wanted a real engine? A V-twin, but not from America, from Italy, and it was mounted the weird way? Number 6. The Moto Guzzi V7. When you see a new Moto Guzzi V7, you think, wow, cool retro bike. Retro? This is the original. This is the 1967 Moto Guzzi V7. This is the bike that birthed the entire Guzzi legend. In the mid-60s, Guzzi was dying. They needed a new bike, and the Italian police needed a new squad car replacement. So Guzzi's legendary engineer, Giulio Carcano, designed this, a 703 cubic centimeter 90-degree V-twin mounted longitudinally. It had shaft drive. It made 50 horsepower. This was not a cruiser. This was a touring bike. It was built to be a mule. It was built to run at 100 miles per hour for 24 hours and not break. It was a tank, and it was brilliant. That transverse V-twin, that shaft drive, that look, this is the Guzzi. The engine they still use today is a direct descendant of this exact bike. It's been forgotten because the new ones are so popular. But this is the father of them all. But Guzzi wasn't the only one building a crazy twin. The other Japanese giant was about to fire a shot that changed the world, and I'm not talking about the CB750. Number 5. The Honda CB450 Black Bomber. This is the bike. This is the bike that actually started the superbike war. This is the 1965 Honda CB450, the Black Bomber. Before this bike, Japanese bikes were toys. They were small, they were nice. The British ruled the big bike world, and they laughed at Honda. And then this bike showed up. It was only a 444 cubic centimeter parallel twin, but it had dual overhead cams, DOHC. It had torsion bar valve springs. This was Grand Prix racing technology for the street. This little 450 made 43 horsepower. This bike was lighter, revved higher, and was just as fast as the biggest bike Triumph made. The British press freaked out. They called it too complex. They said it will never last. They were wrong. This bike was a giant killer. It was the shot across the bow. It was Honda proving they could beat the British at their own game. It's completely forgotten because just 4 years later, Honda released the CB750 and this bike became a footnote. But the Black Bomber was just a warning shot. The real insanity, the Widowmaker, was being built by Kawasaki. Number 4, the Kawasaki H1 Mach 3. This bike barely makes the 60s list. It was released in 1969, and it blew the decade apart. This is the Kawasaki H1 Mach 3. This was Kawasaki's answer to the CB750. Honda built a smooth, sophisticated four-cylinder gentleman's bike. Kawasaki built a knife-wielding psychopath. It was a 500 cubic centimeter two-stroke triple with a 60 horsepower. It weighed 380 pounds. It was the fastest accelerating, most violent, most terrifying production bike on Earth. The power band didn't come on, it detonated. The front wheel would not stay on the ground also. It was a brilliant engine and a terrible frame. The frame was made of noodles. The brakes were an afterthought. It wobbled, it shook. It was known as the Widowmaker. The bike was a brilliant idea that was flawed in production, and it defined Kawasaki's bad boy image forever. Now we've reached the top 3, and these are not normal. We are leaving normal behind. We are talking about a bike that was the Rolls-Royce of its day, a bike that was so ugly, it was brilliant, and a bike that had a car engine. You are definitely not ready. Number 3, the BMW R69S. This is not a motorcycle. This is a timepiece. This is the 1960 to 1969 BMW R69S. When you look back at the 60s, what do you see? You see British bikes that vibrated so hard parts fell off. You see Italian bikes that were beautiful but fragile. You see early Japanese bikes that were buzzing little two-strokes. And then you see this. This bike was the Rolls-Royce of the 60s. While everyone else was building machines that leaked oil on your driveway and required a mechanic in the sidecar, BMW was building a masterpiece of precision engineering. It had a 594 cubic centimeter boxer twin. Now you might look at the specs and scoff. It only made 42 horsepower, but numbers don't tell the story. It wasn't about peak power, it was about perfection. This engine was so smooth, so balanced, so meticulously over-engineered that it could cruise at 100 miles per hour, not for a few seconds, not downhill with a tailwind. All day long. You could ride this bike from New York to Los Angeles flat out, stopping only for gas, and it would just ask for more. It wouldn't overheat, it wouldn't rattle apart, it would just hum. And the features? They were decades ahead of the competition. It had shaft drive, no chain to adjust, no grease to fling onto your pants, just a silent, maintenance-free shaft. It had the famous Earl's Fork front suspension, that weird leading link fork design. It wasn't just for looks, it meant the bike didn't dive under braking. When you hit the brakes on a normal bike, the nose drops. On the R69S, the whole bike stays flat. It was like magic. It was silent. It was black with those hand-painted white pinstripes. It looked like something a Bond villain's top henchman would ride while chasing 007 through the Alps. It was flawless. So why is it forgotten? Why isn't it as famous as the Bonneville? Because it cost a fortune. It was so expensive, so boring because it didn't break down, so perfect in its execution. that it was completely ignored by the performance crowd who wanted loud pipes and wheelies. But the riders, the real riders, the ones who put serious miles on their machines, they knew. This was the best-built motorcycle of the 60s, period. But the BMW was about perfection. It was about refinement. What about a bike that went the complete opposite direction? What about a bike that was a monster? A bike with a 4-cylinder Grand Prix engine for the street that the company made ugly on purpose? Number 2, the MV Agusta 600. This is the craziest story of the 60s, and it starts with a bike so strange, so deliberately awful, it almost killed a company. This is the 1966 MV Agusta 600. Now you have to understand who MV Agusta was. They were the Ferrari of motorcycles. They were absolutely dominating Grand Prix racing. They had the best riders in the world, legends like Giacomo Agostini. They had the best engineers, and most importantly, they had the best engines. Their 4-cylinder GP bike was a thing of myth. It screamed like a banshee and won everything, and the world was desperate. Enthusiasts begged Count Domenico Agusta, the eccentric aristocrat who ran the show, to sell a production version of that glorious 4-cylinder engine. But the Count? He hated that idea. He was paranoid. He was terrified that if he sold a powerful 4-cylinder to the public, some privateer idiot would tune it up, take it to the track, and beat his factory team. It was an obsession. So he said, "Fine, you want a 4-cylinder? I will give you a 4-cylinder." And then he sabotaged it. He deliberately, maliciously, and on purpose made it the ugliest motorcycle on Earth. He took his 592 cubic centimeter, 4-cylinder DOHC masterpiece, an engine that was light years ahead of anything else, and he neutered it. He put heavy shaft drive on it to sap the power and ruin the handling. He gave it that bizarre rectangular square headlight that looked like it came off a Fiat. He slapped on a hideous, bulbous, humpback gas tank that made people physically recoil. He detuned the engine down to a paltry 50 horsepower. He made absolutely, positively sure that no one could ever turn this thing into a race bike. And in doing so, he created a legend. It was brilliant because it was the first production 4-cylinder motorcycle since the war. It proved it could be done, but it was forgotten because it was so damn ugly, so heavy, and so expensive that nobody bought it. It was a spite bike, a Grand Prix engine hidden inside a troll's body. But a 4-cylinder, that's cute compared to what was happening in Germany. What if you wanted something bigger? What if you wanted a car engine? The biggest, baddest, most forgotten, most insane bike of the 60s. This is it. Number 1, the Munch Mammoth. This is the craziest motorcycle you have never heard of. This is the 1966 Munch Mammoth, the Mammoth. Friedel Munch wasn't just an engineer. He was a mad scientist, a German genius with a garage and a dream that was terrifyingly simple. He looked at the motorcycles of 1966, the Triumphs, the Hondas, the BMWs, and he laughed. He thought, they are all too small. So he did something insane. He went out and got an engine, but not a motorcycle engine. He got one from a car, an NSU Prinz 1000 TT car to be exact. He took that 996 cubic centimeter, air-cooled 4-cylinder car engine, and he decided to build a motorcycle around it. This thing was a monster. It made 55 horsepower. Now, in an era where 40 horsepower was considered fast, 55 was unheard of. It was a titan. But it wasn't just the engine. The whole bike was an exercise in excess. It was hand-built. Every single one was a custom job. It was so powerful that it kept breaking rear spokes, so Munch had to invent a solution. He created a massive cast magnesium rear wheel, decades before magnesium wheels were common on race bikes. It had a headlight that looked like it came off a locomotive. It had a gas tank the size of a small country. This was the first true muscle bike. Long before the VMAX or the Rocket the 3, there was the Mammoth. This was the Viper Tomahawk of the 60s. It was brutal. It was huge. It was terrifying to ride fast because the brakes were optimistic at best. But it was brilliant. It was a glimpse into a future where motorcycles would have more power than they knew what to do with. So why is it forgotten? Why don't we see them at every bike show? Because it was not a production bike in the normal sense. They only built a handful. It cost more than a luxury car. Only the wealthiest, most eccentric speed freaks could afford one. It was a dream, a fever dream of power and engineering madness. A car engine on two wheels. It is the most insane, the most forgotten, and the most brilliant motorcycle of the 1960s. Period. Click the next video and let me know in the comments what your greatest forgotten bike of the 60s is. And if you enjoyed this ride through history, do me a favor. Click like, hit subscribe, and ring that bell.